Welcome to the very first YouTube video tutorial from Buttermilk Creek Quilts. We're glad you're here. Today we're going to talk about the quarter square triangle block, also called the hourglass block sometimes. So I've got a couple of projects here that incorporate this block, a couple of table runners, and I've got a couple of churn packs that we currently have in the shop. These are from Riley Blake, so they're actually called 5-inch stackers, but we've got a couple of those. Actually 3 options that are in the shop right now, and I'm going to tell you how you can use a churn pack to make either of these. But we're going to break it right down to an individual quarter square triangle unit. So this is how it looks, and we're going to start with a churn pack, a 5-inch square. So I've actually cut this from yardage that we have in the shop. This is from Timeless Treasures. It's the Belle Filigree pattern in sky blue, and I've paired it with a Kona Snow solid. And the very first thing we're going to want to do when we're working with these fabrics, so if for instance you're working with a churn pack, the first thing you're going to want to do with that churn pack is divide it into half into lights and half darks. And then you're going to want to pair those together. So that's what I've got essentially here. So my Kona Snow is going to be my light, and my Belle Filigree is my dark. So inevitably in a churn pack, you'll have some of your prints that kind of fall into that medium category. They're neither light nor dark. And with that, the best thing to do is make sure that they're either paired with your most light fabrics or your most dark. So you've still got that contrast between the 2 prints that you're using. So we're going to pair these right sides together. So the pretty sides of our fabric are going to face one another.
Should I come over now?
Yeah, come on over. So we've paired our fabrics here, right sides together. And of course on your solid, there isn't necessarily a right side, but if you're working from a churn pack, there will be. And then we're going to use our acrylic ruler to draw a diagonal line from one corner to the opposing corner. And you can use whatever marking tool you prefer. I'm just using a mechanical pencil today. And then we're going to stitch a scant quarter inch on either side of this drawn line. So I'll meet you over at the sewing machine. So we're going to stitch using our 1/4 inch foot a scant 1/4 inch away from that drawn line. Okay, so what I mean by a scant 1/4 inch is we're going to sew, instead of resting our drawn line on the outside of the 1/4 inch foot, we want it to rest just on the inside. So it's just underneath, not peeking out at all. So right off the edge. And when you're working on this, if you are doing one of the projects that we're going to talk about in a minute, you probably will want to just chain piece the next one right on. But since we're only working on one right now, we're just going to turn it around and we're going to stitch down the other side. So that's how it should look right now. So here is what we've got so far. So we're going to come over here, and actually before you even get to this step that I'm at now, if you'd like, you can go over to your ironing board and you're just going to give this a press. And what that does is it just helps this stitch line kind of sink into the fabric and become part of it. It sets your seam. And then what we're going to do is we're going to cut right on that drawn line, right between our rows of stitching. And essentially what you've done now is created 2 half square triangle units.
Look at that.
1, 2. And I've got a couple of them already pressed open here. So if we were just stopping here and using these as half square triangle units, we'd want to trim them down. But we're not going to do that yet with 1/4 square triangles. We'll do that at the end. So what we want to do next is, again, we're going to put them right sides together. this time we are going to line up those seams, but we're going to face the blue in opposite directions. So on the bottom, I've got it facing this direction, on the top, this way. And when we pressed these triangles open, we pressed our seam allowance toward the darker of the two fabrics. And because of that, we can kind of nest or butt those seams right up against one another, and they almost lock in place, lock together in place. And you can kind of feel with your finger that they're right up next to each other the whole way across here. And we're lining up all the sides. And we're going to draw another diagonal line. This time, we're drawing it perpendicular to our stitch line from our first line. So we're going to take on our acrylic ruler one of our lines, and we're going to line it up with our stitch line. And at the same time, we're going to try to get as close as we can to the corners of our triangle. So we really do want to create a 90-degree angle between our first stitch line and the drawn line that we're creating right now. Come in with our pencil and draw corner to corner. And now we're all set. We're going to stitch a scant 1/4 inch from this drawn line again, and then I'll meet you back here. So after we've stitched a scant 1/4 inch on either side of that second drawn line, we're going to, again, you can press to kind of set those seams, and then we're going to come in and we're just going to cut again right on that pencil line that we drew. And now when we open up these units, you'll see that we've created that hourglass or 1/4 square triangle unit that we were going for. And we've got 2 of those. So from 2 of our background 5-inch squares and 2 of our, or sorry, it was only 1 of each, from 1 5-inch background square and 1 5-inch dark square, we've created 2 1/4 square triangle units. So from each block, you'll get 1 essentially, each square that you cut in the beginning. So now I'm going to show you how to trim down your finished unit, because we do really want this to be nice and square. And I'm going to show you a couple of ways. So there are such a variety of rulers out there that there's lots of products you may have to do this final step. But I'm going to show you, let me see here. Actually, this is a better ruler for this. So what we want to do is, usually there is a 45-degree angle on your ruler, on just about any ruler that you might have. And you're going to want to line that up with that last seam that we made on our block. So you can see how I've got it lined up there. But the other thing that you want to watch for is that your 2-inch line, where the 2-inch line from either side intersects, that it's in the center of your block. And if that's the case, then your 4-inch line should also be lining up on either side with where your fabrics intersect on the other diagonal. Can you see that there?
Mm-hmm.
All right. So now we're going to go ahead and we're going to trim 2 sides, and then we're going to flip it. And we'll line all of those points up again. So we're going to line up our 45 diagonal line right along our last seam. And we're also just looking to make sure that the 2's hitting right in the center, and that our 4 lines on either side are hitting right where those fabrics intersect, our blue and our white on the edges there. And that yields our finished block. So there you have it. Now I did want to mention one other product that I use an awful lot. So this is a block lock ruler. And when you're using a block lock ruler, you'll notice on that last seam we pressed to one side. A block lock ruler has a notch cut out of the diagonal, cut out on the diagonal on the ruler. And so it kind of nests right into your block. And so if I line this block up, if I were to trim it, you're going to line it up the same way we did on the other one. It's just that it's a lot more secure. And sometimes with the other rulers it will slip. And so this is a great notion to have in your sewing bag if you're looking for something to add. I find the 6.5 inch size is really nice. I use it to square up half square triangle and quarter square triangle units, anything under 6.5 inches. So that's a great tool to have. And we'll just meet back here. I'm going to tell you about some of the projects and the fabric requirements for the projects that we've got. So now that we have mastered the quarter square triangle unit, we're going to talk about a couple of projects that you might want to make. So this first runner is very small. I made it for a specific spot that was quite a small spot in our home, just a little entryway table. Got some loose threads there. And our finished hourglass block that we just made, we were trimming that down to 4 inches. So once you sew that into a quilt, it's a 3.5 inch finished block. So I've set those 3.5 inch finished blocks into a 3 by 7 grid here. And so you've got 21 blocks that it takes to make this runner. And this runner finishes at 11 by 25 inches. So if you're making this, it only takes half a charm pack. I used a charm pack for this one. So you'll need half a charm pack. You'll need a 1/4 yard for your binding, and that's assuming that you're using 2.5 inch wide binding. And then you'll need a 1/2 yard for your backing. Now, you could also use a full charm pack. And if you do, I would recommend laying those 42 blocks out in a 4 by 10, so you'll have 2 left over, a 4 by 10 grid. And if you do that, that project will measure 14.5 by 35.5, and you'll need a 1/4 yard of binding and a 1/2 yard for your backing. And then I want to talk about one other option, and we're going to come here to the table, and I'm going to show you, this is my dining room table. And so if you've got a table that seats 6, this is a really nice size for that. And so this one I have actually used a full charm pack, but I paired it with 30 inches by width of fabric of a background. So in this case I used Kona Snow, which we have in the shop. And so you'll need that, but you'll also need 10 inches by width of fabric for your binding and 3/4 yard for your backing. And again, that's assuming that you're using 2.5 inch wide binding. And so this runner measures 18 by 53 inches, and I've arranged my blocks in a 5 by 15 grid. And so that's 75 blocks that it takes to make this project, so you will have a few leftovers. You'll notice when we're looking at the finished runner that when we've got these blocks, we're actually alternating them. So if we look here, this one has the darker color on the top and bottom, and the next one has the darker color side to side. So you're going to want to alternate your blocks in order to get this kind of a pattern. You could set them this way, but that's going to give you a completely different look. So to mimic the look that I've shown you in either of these projects, you're really going to want to alternate how these are directed. Thanks for joining us today. So grab a charm pack and you can get sewing. I wanted to thank you for joining us on our first video. And if you liked it and you'd like to see more content, we can get more practice at this, you can subscribe below or hit like and let us know that you enjoyed the video. We'll see you next time.